This is Kent Hovind. He is a young earth creationist nutcase, and he did this seminar series. I want to listen to the seminar series. This is part 7, question and answers. They're independent of each other, so you don't have to see the previous ones to understand. Let's see what he had to say here.
Bible, and God came across 2 Chronicles chapter 4, and it says, Solomon made a great sea of 10 cubits from brim to brim, and 5 cubits the height thereof, and a line of 30 cubits did compass it about. I read that, I set my Bible down on my bed, and I said, Lord, this is wrong. If it's 10 cubits across, it's not 30 cubits around. Anybody that studies mathematics knows to find the circumference of a circle, its diameter times pi, 3.14159.265.
That's a good point. That's funny. Pointing out that the Bible gets pi incorrect.
I said it should not be 30 cubits around, it should be 31.415.9 cubits around. Why did he say 30 cubits around? I thought there was an error in the Bible, and I was going to quit Christianity.
There is an error in the Bible.
And I read the passage and read it and read it and read it and said, wait a minute, wait, I'm missing something here. Verse 5 says it was a handbreadth thick. That's a lot of brass, that thick. And the brim of it was like the work of the brim of a cup. There are 2 theories of how to solve this supposed contradiction. One
supposed contradiction literally gets pi wrong in the Bible, and it's a supposed contradiction.
Theory says it was 10 cubits outside to outside, not counting the thickness of the brass. Now that'll work. If you take 10 cubits, elbow to fingertip, subtract 2 handbreadths, and calculate backwards, you get a value of pi for the inner circumference of 3.14159. It'll work fine. You can give it a try. The other theory is that it says it had a brim like a...
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to understand. So, just to clarify, pi is the circumference of a circle divided by its diameter, right? How long it takes to get from one point back to the same point divided by how wide it is at the center. That's what pi is. And the answer is always 3.14 because it's a ratio. Doesn't matter how big the circle is. It's always going to be 3.14159, so on and so forth. And he says, if I understand correctly, I think he's saying the Bible says you should measure the circle from the outside of the pencil line on one side to the inside of the pencil line on the other. Am I interpreting this correctly? I think that's what the argument is.
A cup. The bowl went up and had a brim coming out, so it's 30 cubits around the bowl, but 10 cubits across brim to brim, counting the little lip sticking out, like most cups are bent out just a little bit. Either theory would probably solve the problem. No, there are no contradictions. So first,
I'm sorry, bro, that doesn't make any fucking sense. It doesn't make any sense. The Bible did not calculate pi correctly. It wasn't even close.
King says, Solomon made this molten sea that held 2,000 baths. A bath is about 8 gallons. Yet 2 Chronicles says it held 3,000 baths. Well, was it 2,000 baths or 3,000 baths? By the way, 3,000 baths, 24,000 gallons, is a small to mid-sized swimming pool. Okay, it's the kind you put in your backyard. That's a 24,000 gallon pool. That's a lot of water or oil or whatever they're going to put in this thing. Well,
or oil? They're going to put oil in it? You think? Could they even dig enough? Could they even dig deep enough back then to be able to reach oil?
Chronicle says it held 3,000 baths. First King says it contained 2,000 baths. Is that a contradiction? No, it's not full. It's 2/3 full, okay? It could hold 3,000, but it's only got 2,000 in it. How many horses did Solomon have? This is a contradiction the atheists always bring up. First King says Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots and 12,000 horsemen.
Which means he had somewhere in that order of magnitude, or he wouldn't have 40,000. He didn't have 100 horses and 40,000 stalls for aforementioned 100 horses, obviously, right?
2 Chronicles says Solomon had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots and 12,000 horsemen. Well, which is it, 40,000 or 4,000? Now, we sell on our website the Defender's Bible by Henry Morris. I love Henry Morris and the Defender's Bible. He's a good personal friend of mine, and his son John Morris, good friend of mine. Love what they're doing. In the Defender's Bible, he's got a footnote right here that says this is a copyist error. He says this number is given as 4,000 in 2 Chronicles. This is best explained as a copyist error. Well, I read that, and I wrote a letter to Henry Morris and said, Brother, I love you, I sell your Bible, but I'm going to have to put a disclaimer in the front page. You have a mistake. Actually, quite a few mistakes in your footnotes. And so I have a 1-page disclaimer that goes with our Defender's Bible that we sell. They've got a stack up in shipping if you want to read it. That says, we love Henry Morris. He's got many good notes in here, but like anything, you got to eat the meat and spit out the bones.
I find it fascinating that Kent Hovind was even aware of this one note in this one part of this Bible. Did he read through all of the margin notes? Certainly not, right? Where did he find out about this copyist mistake bit? It's true, it was a copyist mistake. There are a lot of copyist mistakes in the Bible. That's the point. That's the point. Lots of mistakes in the Bible. It was not written by God. It's the bottom line. Either he would prevent it from being altered throughout history, or it wasn't written by him at all.
He's wrong about this one. There is not a copyist error. Both of those verses are absolutely fine. Read them carefully. Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots. Does that tell me how many chariots he had?
Again, if he had 40,000 chariots, he would have roughly the same number of horses. It makes no sense for this dude to have 40,000, but only have 4,000 horses. That's complete and total nonsense.
No. That tells me how many horses he had for the chariots, right? For 2 Chronicles. And Solomon had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots. Oh, no, that's different. Apparently he had stalls for keep the horses and chariots, and he had other stalls just for the horses for the
Oh, please, dude. God, the mental gymnastics and twisting is insane.
chariots. Well, if they had 40,000 stalls of horses for the chariots, and he had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots, they had 10 horses per stall. 10 horses per chariot, I'm sorry. Not a contradiction at all. King James got it exactly correct. 10 horses.
It's nonsense, brother, really. You can't be serious with this, please.
Per chariot. They would never put one horse per chariot. I mean, one arrow takes out the whole tank. They had chariot teams, actually. NIV got it wrong. New American Standard got it right. I collect other Bible versions. I got a bunch of them here. New Revised Standard got it wrong. How many men did David kill? 700 or 7,000? Well, look at the passages carefully. The Syrians fled before Israel, and David slew the men of 700 chariots of the Syrians. 1 Chronicles. David slew of the Syrians 7,000 men which fought in chariots. Well, which is it? 700 or 7,000? Read it carefully. Again, Henry Morris has a footnote here that says this is a copyist error. No, I'm sorry, Henry, it is not a copyist error.
There are a ton of errors all through the Bible. Look, I talked about this before. I'm just going to touch on it one more time. owenmorgan.com/bibviz. This is not mine. I'm just pointing to it. But look, these are the errors in the Bible. Does God lie? No, God cannot and does not lie. Numbers 23, 1 Samuel 15, 2 Samuel 7, Psalm 119, Titus 1:2, Hebrews 6:18. Yes, God does lie by proxy. He sends his prophets or lying spirits to deceive. 1 Kings 22, 2 Chronicles 18, Jeremiah 4:10, Jeremiah 27, Ezekiel 14:9, 2 Thessalonians 2:11. I mean, there are a billion of these. What's this one? Hang on. How should non-believers be treated? Deuteronomy 13 says, kill them. 2 Corinthians 6 says, shun them. Leviticus 19 says, love and be kind to them. Matthew 22, Mark, Luke, they say love and be kind to them. Romans, Galatians, James. Let's see, is the devil tied up or free to roam? 2 Peter, Jude, Job, 1 Peter, they say the devil is, 2 Peter 2:4 and Jude 1:6 say he's tied up. Job 1:7, Job 2:2, 1 Peter 5:8 say the devil's free to roam around. There are contradictions all over the fucking place, and you cannot grapple with all of them. You can't. It's impossible. It's cute you're picking out one or two here or there to try to shoot down and say, oh no, the Bible is 100% completely and totally right in all circumstances. But it's nonsense. And you know it's nonsense, Kent.
Both verses are fine. Look at them carefully. If he slew the men of 700 chariots, and he slew 7,000 men which fought in chariots, what does that mean? 10 men per chariot. They had 10 men and 10 horses. They had chariot teams. You go out, you fight for a while, you come back, you swap out. See, the
This is nonsense.
chariot does not get tired. The men and horses get tired. And the chariot is your tank. You don't want to lose that thing. So somebody gets wounded, hurt, bring them back, swap out. They had chariot teams. NIV got it wrong. He killed 700 of their charioteers and 7,000 of their charioteers. There's a clear contradiction. Most of the new Bible versions that I'm aware of have some real serious contradictions built in. I'm not aware of any in the King James.
Really? You're not? You don't know of any contradictions in the King James Version of the Bible? Hold on, let's see. No need to wonder, just loaded up our question gun. Let's go answer hunting. You have a license for that question gun, sir? I'm unlicensed. I'm concealed carry. Whip that puppy out and fire all over the place whenever I want. All right, here we go. Solomon's stalls is actually a prime example of a contradiction that's in the King James Version, but not in the other versions as well. It's unique to King James. The temple burning date, 2 Kings 25:8 says, Nebuzaradan came to Jerusalem on the 7th day of the 5th month, while Jeremiah 52:12 says it was the 10th day. Well, apologists try to reconcile this by saying he arrived on the day and entered on another. The KJV text presents both as describing when he came to destroy the temple, so it's just nonsense. Knows animals. Genesis 6:19-20 instructs Noah to take 2 of every kind of animal, but Genesis 7:2-3 says to take 7 pairs of clean animals and 2 of the unclean animals. That's a clear, unambiguous error. KJV has both passages, creating an internal contradiction about God's original command. Translation error is present in the KJV. Acts 12:4, Easter. The KJV incorrectly translates the Greek word Pascha as Easter in Acts 12:4, when it should be Passover. The KJV correctly translates the same Greek word as Passover in the other 28 times it appears. 1 John 5:7, the Johannine comma. The KJV includes, for there are 3 that bear record in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost, and these 3 are one. Words that did not appear in any Greek manuscript before the first 1,000 years and were added to support the Trinity doctrine. This is a late addition from the Latin Vulgate that crept into a few Greek manuscripts. Just a few examples of the King James Version getting it flagrantly and blatantly wrong.
The Bible says in Genesis 10, these are the sons of Shem after their families, after their tongues. So the languages are divided in chapter 10. But you read chapter 11, it says the whole earth was of one language. When I debated Farrell Till, who's the editor of an atheist magazine up in Illinois, he said, the Bible's got a contradiction. Chapter 10 says the languages were divided up, and chapter 11 says the whole world's of one language. See, Bible's wrong. Farrell, chapter 11 is recapping like giving a headline. Suppose you saw the headlines in the paper, 10 children killed in school bus accident. Then you start reading the article, and it says, the bus was driving down Highway 12. You say, wait, I thought they had a wreck. Yeah, the headline is summarizing the story, and now they're going back and giving the detail.
Oh, nonsense. Give it a fucking rest, Kent, really. He thinks he's being clever with these little sidesteps. He's not. It's nonsense. It's complete trash.
Okay. Chapter 10 summarizes the story, and chapter 11 is going through and giving some of the details. Not a contradiction. Here's another supposed...
I'm sorry, man. It's a contradiction, and you know it's a contradiction. They're all over the fucking place.
Contradiction. How many died in the plague? Numbers 25 says, those that died in the plague were 20 and 4,000. When you read the story in 1 Corinthians, it says there fell in one day 23,000. Well, which is it? 24,000 died in the plague, according to Numbers, or is it 23,000 died in the plague?
That's important. It's not the same fucking number, obviously. They're different numbers. So which is it? God's creation, his book here, is perfect, right? So there shouldn't be any errors, right?
Well, again, read it carefully. No contradiction. How many died in the plague? 24,000. How many died in one day? 23,000. Well, 1,000 died the next day from the same
Oh, please, come on.
plague. It's not a contradiction at all. So we go through in our college class quite a few of the supposed contradictions in the Bible. If you think there are some, you can contact our office on our during our radio program. We have all kinds of time. We can take an hour-and-a-half question every day on supposed contradictions in the Bible or questions on creation or evolution.
Sid, as Trump would say. Sid. Absolutely absurd, dude, really. Like, Kent Hovind knows he's full of shit, right? He must know he is completely full of shit.
Another contradiction people often ask about is, isn't the word Easter in the King James Bible an error?
Yes.
Didn't they make a mistake here? Every other version of the Bible, and I've got a whole collection of them here on the table.
Let me clarify this, because, this was from the other section. The word Easter is in the Bible, the word Easter is in the King James Version once, I believe, and it's supposed to say Passover, but they translated the word Passover correctly in other parts. It was just this one section where they lied and twisted it and wanted it to seem like it was using Christian language when it was not. So yeah, this is a great example of an error, an intentional knowing error by the King James translators.
They use the word Passover in Acts chapter 12, verse 4. Look up Acts 12:4, and they say, after Passover. King James says after Easter. Well, let's read the passage and see what the truth is, okay? Now about that time, Herod the king stretched forth his hands to vex certain of the church, and he killed James, the brother of John, with a sword. And because he saw it pleased the Jews, he proceeded further to take Peter also. Then were the days of unleavened bread. And when he apprehended him, he put him in prison, delivered him to 4 quaternions of soldiers, intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people. Is Easter a mistake?
Yes, it is a mistake by the King James translators. And I don't think it's even a mistake. I think it's an intentional alteration of what it originally said.
All the other versions say Passover right there. Well, let's go back and study the original Passover. In Exodus chapter 12, the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, he said, this month, talking about April, shall be the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak unto all the congregation of Israel, in the 10th day of this month, take a lamb. April 10th, you pick out a lamb, keep it up for 4 days. On the 4th day, April 14th, you kill it and you eat it that night. That was the Passover when they were getting ready to go out of Egypt. Okay. And then you put the blood on the 2 side posts and on the top of your door. It says, they shall eat the flesh that night, April 14th. Kill the lamb, put the blood on the door, eat the lamb that night.
Yes, that's Passover.
Verse 11. It's the Lord's Passover. Eat it in haste, have your shoes on, hold your staff in your hand. Jews today still go through this, every year they go through the Passover celebration. Amazing to watch. We did this as a kid.
Amazing to watch. Okay.
My mom had us do this several times. We loved it. Okay. Verse 14. This day shall be unto you a memorial. You shall keep it a feast. Verse 15. 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. Here's the sequence. 10th day, pick out a lamb, watch it for 4 days, make sure no blemishes. 14th day, kill it. That night is the Passover. The death angel passed over the children of Israel if they had the blood on the doorpost. Eat it that night. For the next 7 days, you're going to be traveling around, running from Pharaoh, and so you eat unleavened bread. They had their kneading troughs, put the bread in there, but no leaven, wrapped it up, put it on their shoulder, carried it around through the wilderness, and ate unleavened bread for 7 days. That was the 7 days of unleavened bread. And they still today do that to commemorate the great Passover. It reminds them, so for 7 days they eat unleavened bread. Verse 17, you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread. 18. In the first month, in the 14th day of the month at even, ye shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at even.
Okay, I'm not seeing how this proves that it's not an error in the King James Version. It clearly is an error.
The 14th, for the next 7 days till the 21st, eat unleavened bread. Numbers chapter 28. The 14th day of the first month is the Passover. And the 15th day of the month is the feast. 7 days shall unleavened bread be eaten. So here's the sequence of events. The Passover was always at night on April the 14th. For the next 7 days, they ate unleavened bread that always followed the Passover. Now there was a pagan festival of Ishtar, or today called Ishtar, Easter. That was a pagan festival that always came near the end of April. And it was so many days after the first full moon, and they had all kinds of formulas to figure out when this day comes. And we still use the same formulas today to calculate when Easter is. But Easter was a pagan holiday to commemorate the earth regenerating itself. Things start to grow again. You got Easter lilies, and so that's why they have all kinds of regeneration symbolism in the Easter holiday, Easter bunny.
I'm just looking this up. I know some of this, but I want to be super extra sure. What he's saying about it being a pagan holiday to regenerate itself or whatever, the earth regenerates, is not exactly right. The Easter pagan connection claim typically confuses several different things. The English name Easter may derive from an Anglo-Saxon spring goddess named Eostre, I think, mentioned once by the Venerable Bede in the 8th century, but this is disputed and the evidence is extremely thin. Most languages use variations of Pascha from Passover instead. The holiday itself, the Christian celebration of Jesus' resurrection, has nothing to do with pagan earth regeneration festivals. It's directly tied to Passover, since according to the Gospels, Jesus was crucified during Passover week. And the timing overlap. Yes, spring festivals existed in many cultures because spring is universally significant for agriculture, but correlation isn't causation. The Christian celebration date was set based on calculations related to Passover, not pagan festivals. Early Christians celebrated Jesus' resurrection on the Sunday following Passover. The Council of Nicaea, 325 CE, standardized the calculation method. This is entirely rooted in the Jewish festival calendar, not pagan traditions. Some modern Easter customs, like eggs, bunnies, did absorb later folk traditions in various regions, but the core religious observance predates these by centuries and has clear Jewish, not pagan origin. So Hovind is perpetuating a myth that conflates the holiday's name etymology, in English only, with the holiday's actual origins and meaning. This is pretty typical of his approach. By the by, follow me on Patreon even if you don't donate. It's a new feature on Patreon where you can follow people for free. And I release stuff all the time for like non-donators, just for like the free tier people. I do Q&As that include the free tier people and everything on there. So check it out. owenmorgan.com/Patreon.
Like Playboy, bunny, okay? All stuff on fertility symbols, Easter rabbits, the Easter eggs. Those are all symbols of fertility. And
all this stuff apparently was brought in later, not connected to Easter.
And it is definitely a pagan holiday. Now, is it something worth fighting and beating somebody up over? No, okay? Christ did rise from the dead, and if you want to celebrate that day, that's fine. People get carried away over these holidays and go around, refuse to celebrate any holidays.
The bunny is a much later folk tradition, not ancient, not pagan religious practice, just cultural customs that developed over time. The bunny tradition appears to originate in the 17th century Germany among Protestants. The earliest clear references are from the 1600s, mentioning an Easter hare or Osterhase that would lay colored eggs for good children. German immigrants brought this custom to America in the 1700s. I had no idea it was that recent. Why rabbits or hares? Rabbits are famously prolific breeders and give birth in spring, so they become folk symbols of fertility and new life, fitting the spring renewal theme. But this is just natural symbolism, not some ancient pagan ritual. That's super interesting. Okay, a little bit of clarification. The Easter Bunny tradition does originate in 17th century Germany among Protestants, with the earliest written reference appearing in 1678. Some sources say 1682. German immigrants brought the Osterhase tradition to America in the 1700s. That's correct, particularly to Pennsylvania. The tradition involved egg-laying hare that judged whether children were good or bad, similar to Santa Claus. Rabbits and hares were naturally associated with fertility in spring. But here's the correction. Eostre or Ostara goddess connection is actually disputed and likely fabricated. The Oxford Dictionary of English Folklore states there's no shred of evidence that hares were sacred to the Anglo-Saxon goddess Eostre, despite many modern writers claiming this. The popular legend about Eostre transforming a bird into a hare that still lays eggs only dates back to the 19th century, 1874 to 83. Not to ancient pagan times. So the connection to ancient pagan goddess worship is largely a 19th century invention. That's just nonsense. I did not realize this. Easter is apparently a fully Christian holiday. There is no pagan root to it. That is very interesting. Knowing is half the battle, as my friend G.I. Joe says.
Any holidays, I don't think you ought to do that. But you need to understand, Christmas and Easter both are pagan holidays, no question. That date anyway is. But I don't think it's nothing worth beating somebody up over. So
he's just incorrect here. I think that's funny. He's trying to justify ignoring the pagan origins of a holiday that doesn't even have pagan origins.
The feast days are never called Passover anywhere in Scripture. Peter was arrested during the days of unleavened bread. It says so very clearly in Acts 12, which means the Passover was already gone. Has to be. Herod wanted to kill him during his own pagan festival of Easter coming up in a few days. King James is the only version to get it right.
No, it's the only version to get it wrong. It translates the word that means Passover to Easter only in that one spot. That is really funny.
Look at Acts 12 now. Verse 3. Then were the days of unleavened bread. And when he apprehended him, he put him in prison, delivering to 4 quaternions of soldiers to keep him intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people. King James is the only one that got it right. And we'll cover more on that in a minute. The guy who invented the word Passover is William Tyndale. He made up that word. And he didn't use that word in Acts 12 in his translation.
Okay, let me check this. All right, here are the facts. 1, the Greek word is Pascha. This word refers to Passover or the Passover festival in Greek. It's used throughout the New Testament. 2, Acts 12:4 context. The verse says Herod arrested Peter and intended to bring him before the people after the Passover. Meta to Pascha. This is clearly referring to the Jewish Passover festival. And 3, Tyndale's translation. Yes, Tyndale translated Pascha as Easter in Acts 12:4 in his 1526 translation, but this doesn't mean that but this doesn't mean what Hovind thinks it means or what he's pretending that it means. Tyndale used Easter because that was the common English term at the time for the spring season / Passover period. In 16th century England, Easter could refer both to the Christian celebration and the general Passover spring timeframe. It was a translation choice reflecting contemporary English usage, not a theological statement about pagan goddesses. The inventor of a word argument is absurd. Language doesn't work this way. Words evolve and their usage changes. Tyndale didn't own the word Passover. He was translating Hebrew-Greek concepts into English.
And we cover more of that in our college class. How did King Saul die? This heretics will say, well, look, it's got a contradiction here in the Bible. In 1 Samuel chapter 31, it says, Saul took a sword and fell on it and killed himself. He committed suicide. He asked the armor bearer, hey, will you kill me? I'm wounded. The guy said, no, I'm scared. And so Saul killed himself. When you read chapter 2, this guy walks up to King David at the camp and says, hey, here's Saul's crown and his jewelry. You know, I killed him. Because
the history is that Saul was the king of Israel, and he banished David as a boy. And David went to the south, the Judea region, which is like kind of a split off of Israel, filled mostly with the tribes of like Benjamin and Judah, who are the historians, and who writes the histories? The historians do, of course. So Judea is always favored in the Bible for that reason, because they were the ones writing it. Anyway, Saul banished David. David goes to Judea and gathers a band of merry men, returns to Israel, comes after Saul, and kills him basically, or he dies, and he takes his place. David takes his place. Gets a bunch of concubines together to unite the region so that he controlled the entire strip of land where trade passed between Africa and Asia. And when David died later on, Solomon, his son, takes over, and the whole region shattered into pieces nearly instantly because Solomon was not wise. He was a fucking idiot. He didn't know how to handle multiple regions like that, and he pissed off everybody by using an iron fist, and it shattered.
David and Saul were enemies. And the Amalekite said, I stood upon him and slew him because I was sure that he could not live after that he was fallen. Well, did he die by suicide or did he die by the Amalekite? There's no contradiction here. He died by suicide, and this guy's lying.
What? There is a contradiction here. So you're telling me there's a lie in the Bible then, right? Am I reading this correctly? There's a lie in the Bible, right?
He's hoping to get a reward. Hey, David, I killed Saul. Ha ha, give me my reward, please. David's reward was, I'm going to cut off your head, son, okay? So there's all kinds of supposed contradictions in the Bible, and we cover a lot of these in our college classes, or if you can call into our radio program. We'll just cover a couple more because we could spend forever on supposed contradictions. There's a book called The Errors in the King James Bible by Peter.
Okay, the errors in quotations. Like I said, I had this up earlier, owenmorgan.com/bibviz. Tons and tons and tons of errors. There are so many, it's ridiculous. There is no way to avoid this fact.
Ruckman. It used to be called Problem Texts. It's basically the same book with a different cover on it. But in here, he covers 500 of the supposed contradictions in the Bible. We've got about 90 pages of data on supposed contradictions in our website, on our downloadable section, on articles about contradictions. Here's one atheists always get to me. They'll say, was Jonah swallowed by a whale or a fish?
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good point. If he was swallowed by a fish, he has absolutely no chance of surviving that because there's no oxygen in the fish. If he's swallowed by a whale, he has no chance of surviving that. He would be digested by the end of it. Seriously, this is absurd. A whale is a mammal, a fish is not.
If you read Jonah chapter 1, it says, the Lord prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and he was 3 days and 3 nights in the fish's belly. Okay? Chapter 2, verse 1. He was in the fish's belly. But when you read the story in Matthew chapter 12, it says Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly. And the atheist will say, aha, see, the Bible's wrong. A fish is not, a whale's not a fish. Ha, ha, ha. Well, in our modern 21st century classification system, a whale is not a fish.
A whale is not a fish, period. They're not the same in any way, shape, or form.
But in the biblical classification system, a whale is a fish.
Well, the problem is that God had this document written and is supernaturally capable of preserving its meaning and intent, right? Why would God get pi egregiously wrong? Why would God use fish in one and whale in the other instead of whale in both places? It makes no sense whatsoever. None.
If it swims in the water, a dolphin is a fish in biblical classification system. So you can't take, Carolus Linnaeus's classification system in the last 200 years and superimpose that on the Bible and call the Bible wrong.
But it's not a fish in any way, and they used the correct word. Why didn't God inspire people to use the correct word in both places instead of just one? It's wrong.
No, it's a whale and a fish are the same thing in biblical
They're not.
Classification.
What you mean to say is they were ignorant of science at the time. They didn't know how it worked. They didn't understand basic science. And as a result, they got the classifications incorrect. That's what you mean to say. Why didn't God get the Bible right the first time?
And we could talk about some of the little minor stuff. There's about 500 passages that people commonly say are mistakes in the Bible. And all of them are covered in Ruckman's book. He's a little rude, crude, and unnecessarily mean about it, but he's right, okay? His logic is really good. This one, the atheists love coming up with this one. They'll say, well, do insects have 4 feet? And I say, no. Well, sort of, because I know where they're headed with that one. In Leviticus chapter 11, it says, these may ye eat of every flying, creeping thing, the locust, the beetle, the grasshopper, but other flying, living things, which have 4 feet, shall be an abomination unto you. They'll say, see, insects have 6 legs. Everybody knows that. Moses must have been stupid, or there's a contradiction in the Bible.
It wasn't about Moses being stupid. He's misunderstanding the problem here, the concern. This is inspired by God. God inspired him to write this information. Why was God incorrect? It's not about these people being stupid or ignorant. We all know that they were stupid and or ignorant, that they just didn't understand or they had no way of learning this information. We know that. Everybody's on the same page. God is not stupid, though, right? Why didn't he put the right words down on the page? Did he write the Bible or not?
Well, I'm sure Moses saw plenty of insects during his life, and he knew about the 6 legs. Why did he say 4 feet? Well, insects do have 6 legs, according to our way of thinking. We have a model
Oh my God, dude.
here of a giant,
Let me guess, they have 4 feet and 2 hands? Is that what it is, you think?
giant mosquito, okay? Somebody made for us out of copper pipe. And they say, see, it's got 6 legs. Well, sort of. Spiders, do they have 8 legs?
No, they have 4 arms and 4 legs, right? Is that what you're going to tell me?
Well, we better be cautious here how we define this. If you look at the Bible carefully, you'll see in the book of Proverbs, chapter 30, it says, the spider taketh hold with her hands.
I knew that's what he was going to do. I knew it. He's saying that bugs have 2 hands and 4 legs. This is so fucking stupid, dude. Really? This is so fucking stupid.
Could it be that 4 of them, which point backwards, are considered feet, and the 4 that point forward are considered hands? Just because we consider them all 8 legs doesn't mean the spider considers them 8 legs. If a spider's going to do something like, maneuver things around, it's going to use its hands. How about the mosquito? Does he have 6 legs?
Oh, it's so stupid, dude. I'm sorry. This is so much.
Or 4 legs and 2 hands? Just because he happens to walk on all 6 of them doesn't mean they're all legs. I don't think
This is so fucking stupid.
there's a contradiction in the Bible. We could spend forever on supposed contradictions in the Bible. So people say, Brother Hovind, why do you use the King James? Man, it's Old English. Nobody can understand it. It's hard.
And it's wrong. Do you know that there are sections added to the Bible later that the King James Version includes that it should not include? Like the last chapter of Mark. I think it's chapter 8 or Mark 16. Okay. Everybody knows the last chapter of Mark was added to later. Everybody knows that. And it was in the King James Version originally. So it ends like this, actually. Mark chapter 16. So the women go up to Jesus' tomb, and they see that it was rolled away, and there are a couple of angels there, I believe, robed people, and it says, "Do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who is crucified. He is risen. He's not here. See the place where they laid him, but go tell his disciples and Peter that he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you." And they went out and fled from the tomb, for trembling and astonishment had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. The end. That's how Mark ends. It's our earliest copy of the gospel account. And then later, somebody didn't like how it ended, so they added to it. They added an additional 9 verses, I think. It goes from verse 9 to 19, so 10 verses. They added 10 more. And it says, Jesus appeared to Mary Magdalene, then he appeared to 2 disciples, and then there's the Great Commission. Afterward, he appeared to the 11 themselves as they were reclining at a table, and he rebuked them for their unbelief and hardness of heart. Jesus is not a rebuking, hateful, angry person, but they wrote that in because they wanted to give a specific impression about him. Some of these the earliest manuscripts do not contain this. This is added after the fact, and it's in the KJV. So he rebukes them because they had not believed those who saw him after he had risen. And he said to them, "Go into all the world and proclaim the gospel to the whole creation." This is where you get the idea of soul winning, as Stephen Anderson calls it. Go out door knocking. "Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved, but whoever does not believe will be condemned." This is where you get the idea that if you're not a Christian, you go to hell. I mean, other parts of the Bible kind of hint to this heavily, this stuff, but this section really fortified and solidified it. "And these signs will accompany those who believe. In my name they will cast out demons," exorcisms. "They will speak in new tongues," speaking in tongues. "They will pick up serpents with their hands." This is snake handling. This is Pentecostal belief. "And if they drink deadly poison, it will not hurt them." This is another thing Pentecostals do. "They will lay their hands on the sick and they will recover." This is faith healing. This is where people get these ideas. And it's fake. Doesn't belong in the Bible. It was added after the fact. So don't tell me the King James Version gets it right. It absolutely does not.
To read, I understand all that. And as a brand new Christian, saved out of the Methodist Church, my mom gave me every kind of new Bible version there was. If a new one came out, "Hey son, you're going to love this one." So I've got a huge collection of all the Bible versions. When I was 16, I had the reviled substandard version of the Bible. It's here someplace, my original copy. But
Wait, reviled substandard version, the RSV? Wow, dude. I mean, listen to him talking shit about the Bible right now. That's wild, right?
By the way, guys, check out my new shop, owenmorgan.com/shop. I have a bunch of really cool designs on there.
I was reading that, going to church, going to this little independent, temperamental, fundamental, right-wing, radical, chicken-eating Baptist church.
Chicken-eating Baptist church.
And the preacher was banging on the pulpit saying the Bible's the Word of God, and I was making notes in my Revised Standard Version. And after a couple of months, he said, "Brother Hovind, you've been a Christian a few months now. It's time you get a Bible." I said, "I got a Bible." He said, "No, you need a real Bible." I was offended. Okay, I thought, "Well, I got a Bible. I've been making notes. I've been reading an hour a day. What do you mean?" He said, "Well, there's real problems with that one." So why King James? It's been 37 years now as a Christian of studying this topic. Why? Look at Psalms chapter 12. "The words of the Lord are pure words, as silver tried in a furnace of earth, purified 7 times. Thou shalt keep them, O Lord. Thou shalt preserve them from this generation forever." What does the word "them" refer back to in that verse?
Hang on. "The words of the Lord are pure words, as silver tried in a furnace of earth, purified 7 times. Thou shalt keep them, O Lord. Thou shalt preserve them from this generation forever." Well, I'm not sure if it was referring to something from a previous verse. That's very possible. But it seems like it's referring to the words of the Lord, right?
Refer back to in that verse? Thou shalt preserve them. Preserve what? His words.
He's trying to look at every past participle of the language when the fact is this is translated by men like 60 trillion different times.
He's promising he's going to preserve his words, right? How about NIV? "The words of the Lord are flawless, like silver purified in a furnace of clay, purified 7 times. O Lord, you will keep us safe and protect us from such people forever."
The NIV was translated by evangelicals, and it's not really a trustworthy translation. The NRSV is really the best one. New Revised Standard Version, especially the NRSVA, anglicized, is a really good translation, in my opinion. That's the chosen version by scholars.
Is that saying the same thing? I mean, I was born at night, but it wasn't last night. It looks to me
Nah.
like somebody's wrong about this one. Okay? What does this mean? Keep us from such people. What people is it talking about? There are very serious differences between these Bible versions. We've got a book. I don't know if I have it here. It's in our library. The guy sent it to me. It took me 6 months to figure out what the title said. I read it. I said, what? Went on to something else. Every time I look at the book, I said, what is this? The title was, Things That Are Different Are Not the Same. I thought, well, duh, why would you title a book like that? You know, things that are different are not.
Because people like Kent Hovind can't get their mind around that fact.
Not the same. And then I thought, wow, these Bible versions are definitely different, so you can't say they're the same. There are, as far as I understand it, 151 English translations of the Bible right now available. The law is you cannot get a copyright and therefore protect your work and therefore get more money unless you have 10% different from the original.
Not true. That is incorrect. I mean, no, there's just nothing correct about that in any way. The Bible is copyright free. You can reprint the Bible to your heart's content because it's not copyrighted. I mean, Donald Trump created his own custom Bible or whatever with like the Constitution in it and stuff, or part of the Constitution. You can reprint the Bible as much as you want. And also, there is no percentage on it like that. If it's sufficiently derivative, then you can reuse it. That's the bottom line. This is just nonsense.
Are there 151 different ways to say each of the verses in the Bible? At some point, you're going to have to stop saying it the right way and say it a wrong way just to make it different, just to get your copyright, just to get your money. Love of money, root of all evil. Here's a quick story. We could take an hour on this one, but
Kent Hovind, tax protester, he hates that, by the way. Kent Hovind, tax protester, is talking shit about people who like money. Money, by the way, is not the root of all evil. People do evil things for and with money, but money also brings happiness. Don't let anybody tell you it doesn't. Money brings jet skis, and I've never seen an unhappy person on a jet ski.
Yeah, right after the time of Christ, the disciples were writing their books, and they were being persecuted and spreading out, and people were copying these letters and copying the Gospels and spreading them out. Persecution hit the church, and they spread out everywhere. And for the next 1,000 years, it was horrible persecution against the church. And if they caught the heretics, the Christians, they would burn them at the stake and burn their Bibles. Well, people were spreading the Word of God around, making all kinds of copies. It takes about 10 months to write out a copy of the Bible using a pen. You don't even have a good ink pen. You got a feather, and you got to keep dipping it in the ink and keep cutting a new point on it. You don't even have a good ink pen, nor do you have good paper to write on. Lumpy parchment, stuff like that, or leather. But anyway, with all the obstacles they had, plus, being persecuted, it took about 10 months to handwrite a copy of the Bible.
I don't know if that's true. That doesn't sound right. Hang on. Let me just see. How long ago? To write out a copy of the Bible in the earliest days with a quill pen, presumably 2,000 years ago, said on parchment or leather. I'm sorry, that does not sound right at all. I'm very suspect. Actually, from the 9th to the 15th centuries, a monk could produce about 2 or 3 books per year. Though this wasn't just writing, they had to tend gardens and prepare food and things like that. So, okay, yeah, maybe, give or take. I suppose that's a fair estimate.
Well, they're making all these copies. By the time you get to 15 and 1600s, persecution lets up, and so people decided to collect the Bible copies together from all over the world and compare them and put it into English.
Yeah.
Now keep in mind, some of these copies of the Bible had not seen each other in 1,000 years. There might have been people in France that were copying the Bible, and people in Africa copying the Bible, and people in China copying the Bible. And you can only use a book so long and it wears out. I've got, I don't know how many, absolutely worn out Bibles. Okay, I think I have probably 5 or 6 that I've just they're shot, okay? If a book that's in active use is going to have a limited life.
Yeah, but they weren't books like we have today. They were not glued into a binding on the side like that or whatever. And they also weren't handled by everybody and their brother. And they weren't handled every single day either like that.
And let's just pick a number and say if you were really careful with your scrolls, treat it real carefully, you might make a scroll last 300 years and still use it every day, just for illustration. Well, so in 300 years, your original is worn out, it's trash, it's junk, you throw it away because you now have, 800 copies of this thing, or a certain large number of copies. Then you take those copies and make copies. And after maybe 1,000 years, you might be on your 4th or 5th generation from the original, but that's perfectly fine. It doesn't matter as long as the copying process was accurate. And a good way to check that copying process and see was it accurate is after each of these, the French ones and the German ones and the English ones and the Chinese ones, each go 5 generations. Now let's get the 5th generation and compare them all and see how accurate they are. And that's what happened in the 15 and 1600s. They got all these scrolls together, found 5,000 copies of the Bible that survived the persecution, and they were identical in everything except spelling. People's names, Peter and Pedro, stuff like that had changed.
I don't think that's accurate, but okay, let's continue.
So they said, man, God truly preserved His Word. This is it. This is word for word exactly. He preserved it.
All right, let's find out. Let's find out. Let's see what we can find out here. Let's see. This is completely false, apparently. Thousands of manuscripts with thousands of differences. We have over 5,000 Greek New Testament manuscripts, and they contain an estimated 300,000 to 400,000 textual variants. Differences between manuscripts. Most are minor, spelling, word order, but many are substantive. Manuscripts do not agree completely. This is objectively, demonstrably false. Scholars spend entire careers comparing manuscripts precisely because they differ from each other. That's literally what textual criticism is, figuring out which readings are original when manuscripts disagree. Major differences exist, including the ending of Mark, like we talked about earlier, absent from the earliest manuscripts. The woman caught in adultery, John 7:53 to 8:11. It's not in early manuscripts. The one where Jesus catches a woman in adultery and he says, "Let he without sin cast the first stone." That's not real. That didn't happen. That's not in the Bible originally. There's all kinds of shit that was added later. This is just complete and total nonsense. What he's saying here is just a flat-out, bald-faced fucking lie. Of course.
So, meanwhile, down in Egypt, there was a group of folks, sort of like Jehovah's Witnesses.
Jehovah's Witnesses, okay.
We've got the Jehovah's Witness Bible here. They were a cult. They came to be known as the Alexandrians. The Alexandrians did not believe in the deity of Christ. They didn't believe in the bodily resurrection. They didn't believe in a lot of Christian things, kind of like Jehovah's Witnesses today.
Wait, I'm sorry. One more time?
Alexandrians did not believe in the deity of Christ. They didn't believe in the bodily resurrection. They didn't
Jehovah's Witnesses believe in the bodily resurrection. What are you talking about?
believe in a lot of Christian things, kind of like Jehovah's Witnesses today. So they made their own copy of the Bible, changing things they didn't like.
Fair enough. Jehovah's Witnesses did do that.
Made about 6,000 changes. The primary guy in this cult was a guy named Origen. He was the leader of this cult in late 2nd century, 3rd century. The only mention of Alexandria in the Bible is when they were disputing with Stephen, arguing with the real Christians. And if you trust the principle of first mention, which I think is very important, then that'll be important to you. They say, wow, the only mention of these folks is bad. And so anything out of Alexandria, anything out of Egypt, period, in the Bible seems to be bad, But Origen started this, or was the primary guy in this cult. They made copies of their Bible also, with their changes in it.
Right, and that happened across the world. There were a lot of examples of that. Like, for example, the last chapter of Mark, like the book of John, where the woman who committed adultery. There are 1,000 examples of this.
And some of them survived. In 350 AD, several copies were made, and 3 of those still survive today. One was found in the Vatican Library, and it's called Vaticanus. One was found in Alexandria, Egypt, and it's called Alexandrus in the Latin. And one was found in Sinai Peninsula in a monastery. There's this old monastery at the foot of this mountain that some pharaoh or some princess said, that's Mount Sinai, and it's not Mount Sinai, by the way. But she said, oh, that's Mount Sinai. Okay, yes, ma'am. And so they still call it Mount Sinai. There's still a monastery there. It's not in Sinai Peninsula. It's in Arabia. Read Galatians 4.
Okay, is it possible that they just named it that because they liked the name?
But they're in this trash can in this old monastery. This guy was visiting. He said, what's this old scroll? He said, oh, we don't know. It's been in there for years. He pulled it out. It was a copy of the Bible, if you can call it that, from 350 AD. And so that one's called Sinaiticus. Well, these 3 scrolls do not agree with each other on anything, nor do they agree with the real Bible. Okay, they're all different. The Catholics, or the monks, translated these 3 ancient scrolls into Latin centuries ago, and it became known as the Latin Vulgate. Vulgate for vulgar means the common language, okay? Then the Catholic, by the way, the Latin Vulgate was a really good translation of a bad book.
Okay.
Then the Catholics came along in 1582 and translated the Latin Vulgate into English with the Douay Confraternity or the Douay-Rheims version of the Bible. And that was a really good translation of a bad book. Then two guys named Westcott and Hort came along. I've got their book here someplace on the table. Westcott and Hort came along, and they were going to make a new, here we go, the Westcott-Hort only controversy. A little bitty booklet about, if you want to study this, just $2 from our ministry. Westcott and Hort were two Greek scholars. I don't know if they were even Christian or not. They probably claimed that they were, like a lot of people do. Okay, but they took these three old...
Yeah, so you're not Christian by definition if you say, I'm Christian. You're only Christian if Kent Hovind says you're Christian. I see.
Ancient manuscripts. They didn't agree with each other, but their thinking was, these are older, therefore they are better. Well, I'll go along with the older part. I'll agree with that, but that doesn't mean they're better. But they synthesized them into one new Greek manuscript and sold it to the world in 1875 and said, we have the oldest and best manuscripts available now for you to translate. And they got the oldest ones all right. The oldest ones that survived is all. Doesn't mean better. Then people started taking their Westcott and Hort version and translating it into English. First one done, 1881, as the Revised Standard, then the American Standard, the Revised Standard, the revised version first.
That's correct. Older does not mean better. However, if we find a bunch of older manuscripts, like multiple older manuscripts, and none of them have this story in them, and we find a newer manuscript that does have this story in it that the others did not, it's a safe bet that the newer one added that story to it. I think he's setting us up for Mark 16 to try to justify believing that it's real anyway.